Last lesson we factorised trinomials using the grouping method. Today we're going to use a different method. It's the method I want you to use. So after teaching you grouping and having you practice some problems here, I no longer want you to use it. Now, why did I get you to use it, I hear you ask? Well, the technique that you use for grouping will help you with the cross method. Okay, so what we're going to do is take these trinomials, these three-term quadratic equations, and use what we call the cross method on it. Okay, so the cross method is a trial and error based, or is trial and error based, but is generally more efficient than grouping. Okay, so I could read you this, but let's just get stuck straight into an example and I'll show you how it's used. Okay, so what we're going to do is factorise this trinomial. So as the name suggests, what we do is we draw up a cross. All right, on this left-hand side, what we do is we list the two things that when multiplied together equals this first term here. Now, in this case, it's going to be x and x. It's pretty obvious what it is. Now, on this right-hand side, what we do is we list the two things that when multiplied together equal 18. And this is the trial and error part of it. This is also, well, this part can be trial and error as well. But at this stage, I know that it has to be x and x on this left-hand side. All right, so what do I think it could be? Well, what I should do when I try out numbers is have a look at what I'm trying to make, which is 11, or negative 11 in this case. All right, and the way I think about it is I think, well, what factors could it be? Like I've got 6 times 3. There's no way I can make 11 from that. I've got 18 times 1. That's not going to work. And I've got 9 and 2. Now, 9 and 2 says something to me because I think I can use 9 and 2 to make 11. So my first try is going to be 9 and 2. Now, what I need to think about is how am I going to make this negative 11? Okay, so the way I'm going to do it is I think that has to be negative and I think that has to be negative because negative 9 and times negative 2 will equal positive 18. And now what I'm going to do is check. So the way I check, girls, is I multiply across these two numbers here. So it's x times negative 9 is negative 9x, and x times negative 2 is negative 2x. And what you have to do is add those together, and what you'll find is that you get negative 11x, which is what that thing is there. Now here's the cool part of this technique. Once I know that I've got negative 11x, or that middle term there, I can simply look across the top here and imagine that in brackets and write that down as x take 9, and this part here, I imagine that in brackets, that's x take 2, and it's factorised. Okay, and you'll get really quick at this method. So initially you're going to find it slower. In fact, some of you will say things like, I prefer the grouping 2 and 2 method. But with persistence, this method becomes very, very quick, and I can show you problems that you won't be able to do very easily using the grouping method that really do need to be done using the cross method. All right, now a reminder, girls, that if you want to check your answers on a calculator, instead of the back of the book, I'd love you to use transformation factor, R factor, and you feed it the trinomial that you want it to factorise, plus 18, and you can check that way whether you've been doing it right or not. Now, most errors are going to occur with you getting like a plus instead of a minus. One of these will be a plus. Now, remember, girls, that if you get that, there's no such thing as close. That's wrong, okay? And you've thought about the process incorrectly, or when you checked, what you'll find is when you double check, this number here will not equal the middle term, okay? So just watch those negatives and positives, and if you're continually getting that wrong, it means that you're going about the process incorrectly. All right, let's do this one here. So let's draw up our cross and think about what our left-hand side must be. Now, this time we've got to make 5x. All right, so the way we're going to do that, there's only one way we can make 5x squared, is one of them has to be 5x and one of them has to be x. All right, now over here we need to make negative 3, and that's going to mean that one of them has got to be 1 and one of them's got to be 3, okay? So I'm going to make I know what the answer is here because I've done enough of these problems to know, but I'm going to put a 1 here and a 3 here. So this is the trial and error approach. Now I have to choose one of them to be negative, okay? So one of them has to be negative, so I'm going to stick a negative sign there. Okay, let's just see what happens. All right, so -1 times 3 does equal -3. Now I'm going to do the check. So x times -1 is equal to -x. 5x times 3 equals 15. If I add them together, that is nowhere even remotely close to +2. Okay, so something is wrong. Okay, now what you've got to get good at, girls, is getting better at predicting or anticipating what's going to happen. Now I know when I multiply 5x by 3, I'm going to get 15 and 1, and there's no way with those numbers I'm going to make +2. So I know that these numbers here are around the wrong way. So I'm going to go back. Here we go. And I'm going to reverse it up. I'm going to put the 3 there and I'm going to put the 1 there. Now thinking ahead, I know that this is going to come out as 5x, this is going to come out as 3x. I need the answer to be 2x. All right, so I know for a fact that that one has to be the negative. Okay, now if you put the negative there, then what you need to do is make sure you just try it out and you'll note that you don't get +2. Let's do our test. No, the negative's in the wrong spot. Okay, so I know that the negative has to be here. This is good. I'm going to leave that little mistake in there because it just shows the trial and error nature of this. All right, so 5x multiplied by 1 will give me 5x. X multiplied by -3 will give me -3x. What happens when I add those two together? I get 2x, which just so happens to be the middle term. All right, remember, now the fun part begins. I imagine that in brackets and stick it in there. 5x take 3, and imagine that in brackets, which is x plus 1. All right. Let's try out this one now. So what we're going to do is, let's just quickly check for a common factor that can be withdrawn. No, I'm afraid there's nothing there, okay? Now, just to show you what the issue is with grouping, is what you would have to do with grouping is you'd have to do 18 times 10, which is 180, and think about what multiplied by what will equal 180, which when added or subtracted equals +27, okay? And pretty much stuff that. Okay, so let's go across. All right, now what we're going to do is try out something here. Now, there's a lot of different variations that can happen with 18x squared. So I'm just going to randomly choose 6x and 3x. Okay, now what I'd advise you to do is start centrally. So what am I saying by that? I wouldn't start at 18 and 1. I would start at 6 times 3. Okay, then I'd try 9 times 2, and then I'd try 18 times 1. Now, for whatever reason, these problems tend to work out more often as the centrals. Okay, now again, this may not work. This is trial and error, but let's just see what happens. All right, so 10, I'm going to try, instead of 10 and 1, I'm going to try 5 and 2. Okay, so I'm going to try 5 there and 2 there. Let's just have a quick think about this. Now, this one here is going to be 12. This one's going to be 15, and bing, bing, bing. I've got this one straight away. So this is a bit of a fluke, girls. I could have put 2 and 5 there, okay, but it is a bit of a fluke that I've got this one out. Okay, so I'm going to do my test now. Now, it's going to be 5 times 2, which is equal to 10, and I'm going to leave them both as positive. Let's go 3 times 5, which is 15x, 6x by 2, which is 12x. When I add them together, I'm going to get 27x. So that is correct. That is my factorized form. 6x plus 5 and 3x plus 2. Okay, so you see how quick that is compared to grouping. I dare say challenge anyone to use the cross versus grouping, and even with a few mistakes in this process or a few bad guesses, you'll still beat someone who's going to do it via grouping. All right, let's try this last one out here. Now, what we're going to do first of all is yank this 4 out as a common factor. So I'm going to rewrite this as 4x squared take 4x take 5. Is that correct? Yes. Okay. So now what I'm going to do is only use the cross method on this inside bracket here. Okay, so I'm going to go x, and this one's easy. It's going to be 5 and 1. That's the only options that can be there because 5 is prime. Now, we need to make -5, so one of these needs to be negative. Which one's it going to be? Well, I know that this ultimately needs to lead to -4, which means I believe this is the one that needs to be negative. All right, so let's multiply it out. -5x and x. Add them together, -4x, which is what we're targeting. Okay, so imagine them in brackets. We're going to get 4, x take 5, x plus 1, and it's factorized. Now, what if you didn't take the 4 out as a common factor and attempted to use the cross straight away? Well, that's okay, you can do that. So if you miss the common factor, you will be forgiven, okay? It's not going to not work out. You'll just have to add another step somewhere else. All right, so let's just try it out and without one. So I'm going to go and try 2x there and 2x there. And I'm going to try, what am I going to do? I'm going to try 4 and 5. All right, let's just see how this would pan out. 2 and 5 is 10, 8. That's not working. Turn some music down there. Okay, so that's not working. So what is it going to be? Is it going to be 10, 2? I think it's going to be 10 and 2. So you notice with the larger numbers, I'm already struggling with the cross, okay? But I think one of them's 10 and one of them's 2. Now I need to make -16, so that's going to be 20. That's it, I think. All right, let's just check it. So I've got 20x and -4x when added together is -16x. No, it's +16x. So I've stuffed it, okay, and that's cool. That's good that you saw me do that, because that means that you know that it's a trial and error approach. So I'm going to backtrack a little bit. What have I done wrong? I've put the negative in the wrong spot. So that's negative there. That means that's -20x, and this is +4x when added together equals -16x, which is what we were trying to do. All right, so now I can bracket them off and get 2x take 10, 2x plus 2. Now, how is that the same as that? Well, it is. Okay, but this is not fully factorized, so you will not get the mark for this if you've been asked to factorize this particular trinomial. Okay, so what we're going to do now is note that this binomial product and this binomial product has a common factor that could be taken out. So I'm going to yank 2 out of this one here, and I'm going to get 2, x take 5, and I'm also going to take 2 out of this one, x plus 1. All right, now noting that these are all being multiplied together, this is the same as 2 times x take 5 times 2 times x plus 1. Now multiplication, the order doesn't matter, so we can do these in whatever order we want. So I can do 2 times 2 times x take 5 times x plus 1. Now, what does that equal? Well, 2 2s are 4, x take 5, x plus 1. All right, so we finally got there. That's the exact same answer as that, but jeepers, okay, that without taking the common factor out makes life a lot more difficult for students. So best bet is anytime you see a non-monic trinomial, a trinomial with a number as a coefficient, or a number other than 1 as a coefficient to the squared term, always attempt to take out a common factor. It could make your life a lot easier. All right, so your homework will be to do these problems, and girls, they're the same 2 exercises as the last lesson, but they're different problems, and I want you to use the cross method. I don't care whether it's slow at first. I don't care whether you get the first 3 or 4 wrong. Once you persist with that, if you're going to do maths methods, you must be able to use the cross method. Again, I can give you a particular problem on the 3-4 methods exam from a few years ago that students who use grouping only really struggle to do, or it takes them forever to do it. Students who use the cross method to do it slammed it out in about 5 seconds. Okay, so I want you to persist with the cross method even if you say you don't like it. It gets better and it gets easier if you're willing to persist with it.